What's the most absurd way you have seen someone fix a problem that should not have worked, but it did? A bird flew right into my living room window and fell to the ground. Birds had done that before. They usually sat there concussed for a few minutes before flying away. I'd sit there to make sure our cats didn't eat them until they could shake it off. But 10 minutes later, this bird was convulsing and bleeding in the same spot, and had ants crawling on it. I decided to put it out of its misery and grabbed a shovel. Lifted the shovel above my head, slammed it onto the ground, and somehow managed to miss it by a solid foot. That bird flew into the air and out of sight like a fucking rocket. I once had a car that you had to raise the hood and touch 2 wires together to get it to start. One day it started running really badly, and when I looked, those wires had loosened up so much they were resting on each other. I tied them apart with dental floss and the car ran smoothly again. The dental floss fix stayed till I sold it and got a better car, and it never ran badly again. I worked with an automated distillation apparatus. At some point the little part that generated the steam gave up on us. Boss gutted a cheap old coffee maker to use its steam generator until we could order the part from another country. He wasn't sure it would even work. We had a good secret laugh when his efforts gave on. Yeah, it kept working like this for years down the road. A friend of mine once realized that the police would not notice that he was pissing in public, if he just pulled out his dick, held it to the side, and pissed during walking down the street. When going out to party, you would walk behind him and suddenly he was pissing while walking normally. The police would drive right by, no ticket ever. Good stuff. In the late 80s, Apple used hard drives that had lubricant that would cause the reading heads to stick. This was called stiction and would mean the computer wouldn't start up. A good smack or two on the case near the hard drive would fix it. I worked in IT and always enjoyed seeing someone's face when that fixed the problem. It was me. I had a shitty old 1991 Geo Prism. The battery connector cable wouldn't tighten enough to secure to the battery, so it couldn't get a good connection and the car sometimes wouldn't start. I stuffed some nickels into the gap on the battery terminal. It tightened the connection and started right up after that. When I worked in a hardware store in the 70s, my watch stopped. A guy grabbed a hammer off the rack, set the watch on the floor, and prepared to swing. I was pretty sure he wasn't going to destroy my watch, and figured he was just messing around. He whacked the floor right next to the watch, and it started working. Someone at work told me you could take the Sky card out of your box and stick it in the freezer to unlock channels you've not paid for. I'm about 20 years too late to try it, but I asked someone else independently who verified it's true but still not sure if it's just an urban myth. Writing website code, it wasn't working. I knew the code was good, but it just wasn't rendering properly. I banged my head against the monitor and then mashed the refresh button a bunch. The code started working. I just shook my head and moved on. My previous landlord would never fix anything and the chain on the toilet flushing mechanism broke. I replaced the broken half with a paper-clip chain and it lasted my last few years there. It was still there when I moved out. I once couldn't get a card to scan on the reader after doing the chip several times and swiping a bunch. Swiped it up instead of down and for some reason it actually scanned. I was like, why did that actually work? That time we rigged up a pair of bog standard thick-walled water pipes to carry a pair of 1000 degrees Celsius, 42mm diameter steel bars across a pair of non-functional rolling stands. The motor that drove the stands had blown up. We had an old Amstrad computer in the 80s. Roof fell in, it rained hard, several pints-sized water went into the computer and fried it. Put it in the airing cupboard for a couple of days, right as rain. Absurd means wildly unreasonable, illogical or inappropriate. If it fixes a problem, I don't know that it can be illogical. Perhaps it could be unreasonable as in unreasonably expensive. Cigarette packets once had foil wrappers inside the box. Cigarette foil wrapped around a cigarette filter got us home a few times by replacing blown fuses before car fuses changed shape. Using a cassette player as a mobile phone speaker, by putting the phone into the cassette compartment speaker first and pressing play on the player. It works. Who'da thunk? Over the past few days, I secretly fixed a computer monitor and a printer by clicking random sequences of buttons until something seemed to click. Doing fire sprinkler work, watching someone piss on a rag and cover it in salt, then lay it on steel pipe to cause a leak to rust closed. To prevent punks from sitting on steps at a park near a famous disco, they kept spraying water on it. I regularly stroked my ancient laptop with my elbow when it was low and it worked like a charm. Nail polish to fill a cavity. Not sure if they're poisoned or not, but they seemed fine. That guy who stabbed the broken hotel TV with a fork and it fixed the picture.